First, apologies for presenting in English, but my name is Louis. It's not more French than that. And notice I did not spell Louis the American way. You have many kings with the same name. Happy to be here. I have no royal blood, it's just the name. So I wanted to talk to you about a really important program for Google, and Google developers in particular, and that's Google Developers Live. I started running Google Developers Live last year. We launched ahead of Google I/O in June of 2012. With the objective of reaching all of our developers around the world in every product, in your time zone, in your language. This is an incredible product, an incredible opportunity to scale out and talk to every single one of you face to face, like I'm doing now, without possibly getting on a plane. So just a quick introduction. Google has a lot of products. You have a lot of ideas. Some of you are exceptionally passionate about Google Chrome, or Chrome OS. You might have noticed I brought my Chromebook Pixel with me here. It's kind of a tease because it's not available for sale in France yet, but I will show a demo if you guys want to see that later. Android, the cloud platform, Drive, Google+. These are all very interesting products that you can build interesting applications on top of. But sometimes it's hard to find where to start. How do I first start with Drive? How do I write my first application in Drive? How do I use Go? How do I start with Google's cloud platform? What if I want to write my first Android app? What if I'm a more advanced developer and I don't care about that new stuff? So how do you start? Do you use a search? I won't ever tell you not to search. Google loves search. I think we're pretty good at it. But if you want to start with a search, what do you expect to find? What about exploring APIs? Google has a lot of APIs. Each one of our products has a lot of APIs. You might have a read API, a write API, different ones that interact with cloud, different ones that interact with Drive. But this can get a little technical, especially if you're jumping in on the first day. What do you do with an API? It can get tiring, it can get solitary, you kind of feel like you're on your own. Who's going to help me? How can I find out and go from being an interested developer who's possibly made one application to becoming a master developer? The best way, in my view, is to go right to the source, to talk to the people who make the applications, who make the services, who make the decisions about what APIs to bring up and how they interact with different programs, those who can give you specific examples of how they built their own applications. So we want to bring you right to those people. You've heard of Google I/O. How many of you have actually gone to Google I/O? A couple on the side. I went to Google I/O 2 times prior to becoming a Googler myself in 2011. I was lucky enough to be in press, and so that meant I didn't have to pay, and I got to sit in one of the first front rows, and I got really good access. One of the great things about Google I/O for me is that you get to have all this exposure and direct access to people who work at Google. And you get to go right to the people who work on Android and understand why it is they do what they do, and see the cool things they're thinking of that you haven't even thought of yet. But it only happens once a year. Let me show you this really quick. Probably not going to have a lot of audio on this, so for the recording, we'll just skip this part. When you take a look at I/O, it's really thousands of people coming in from around the world to... I'll show this real quick.
To the over 6,000 people here, to our Google I/O viewing parties that are happening all around the world, to the over 1 million people who will be watching live stream on YouTube. Welcome to Google I/O. It's been a pretty busy year, and I'm thrilled to announce our latest milestone. 1 million new Android devices are activated every single day.
So Google talks in big numbers. 1 million Android devices every day, and it's even higher already. 1 million developers watching from around the world. But that's only 3 days a year. You know, May 15 through 17, I believe, is happening this year. So what about the other 362 days? What about the rest of the year when Google I/O is done? Do you go back home? Do you forget what you learned? Do you go back to your day job and remember all those things that you should have gotten done when you were away playing in San Francisco? We want to bring the excitement of Google I/O and the accessibility of our developers and our tools from Google I/O and do it every single day. And so what we wanted to do was really scale. But there's something really challenging with scale. It's not only language, but it's location, it's time of day. I'm over here, and my colleagues in Mountain View are 8 hours behind, speaking English, just like me. There's others of us in Australia and Tokyo. There's other of us who are working around the world making interesting developments. But we can't be everywhere at once. So how can we get to have this face-to-face relationship that I'm having with a relatively small number of people in this room with everybody around the world? We have tools for that. One of them is YouTube. How many of you have heard of YouTube? That's most of you. Not just cat videos anymore. How many of you have heard of Google Plus and Google Plus Hangouts? How many of you have done a Hangout? One cool thing about a Hangout is it's simple. Really, after that first plugin, there's no tools to download. You press the button and you're on the air. And we have Hangouts on Air, which are permanently recorded until you delete them. They're recorded directly on YouTube on your channel. And you can hang out with upwards of 9 people at once, or even do a Hangout on Air and have that broadcast out to the world. So what we decided was, rather than flying a small team of people around the world to many different stops and spending a lot of money and meeting with only a few people, relatively, we could open the doors and have a transparent discussion with everyone around the world at the same time, and then store every single one of these presentations live in our YouTube directory. One thing that happened in the years before I joined the team was we were doing Google Developers Days, and I think some of you have gone to those. And the Google Developers Days were good for those of you who are in the room. But because we didn't want to scoop ourselves, per se, and show the same event and record it and have no reason for you to come, they weren't even recorded. And so we felt like that was a real lost opportunity in terms of getting that content out to the world. And Google's not just about the people in this room, it's about everybody. And so we launched Google Developers Live. And Google Developers Live, which you can find at developers.google.com/live, has live presentations every single day, interactive engagement, which means not just that I can see you face to face and you can ask questions and actually be on the show yourself, but we also take questions from Google Moderator, YouTube, and Google Plus to have those comments feeding in directly in real time, and we'll answer them on the air. I think it's a lot of fun. For those of you who've ever watched the talk shows, be it Larry King or something that you guys listen to, you get that question of, I don't know what they're going to say, and you have to answer it live and really put people on the spot. You get it from the source. The people who are coding 18 hours a day and then emerge for 1 hour to be on the show and then go back to their desk. I like that. I think we really don't want to have the fluffy marketing people on the stage. We want the geeks. We want the people who know the answers, who you guys like and identify with. And we're going to scale it to your time zone. One thing that's happened is we start with something in Mountain View, and you think it just stays there, but that's not how we're going to work. We're going to bring Google Developers Live, and we're in the process of doing that, and making it worldwide. I was just talking to Alexis today about the studio we're building here in Paris to present in Francais to you guys when you want about the products that make sense. And so the next time that Francesca is going to come up here and talk about Go, if he's not in Mountain View but he's here, he can do it from here. And so we're very excited about that. And just a quick sample of the type of events that we've had. Google Developers Live, at its base level, is a platform. It's a platform for our developers to talk to you. And that can be about anything. It can be writing your first Drive app in Go. And the reason I use that example is because I know they've done it. I've been behind the scenes making sure these happen, scheduling them, running them. So if somebody can come up and say, here's how to write your first Drive app in .NET, in JavaScript, in Java, in Go, in C, in C++, if you have a language that you desire to use and you have a product that you want to impact, there's no better place to find that than Google Developers Live. When Google Plus introduced the sign-in capability a couple weeks ago, they put the blog post out that morning, and that afternoon they were on Google Developers Live to talk about it. That's the new reality. It's not something where you take a blog and you wait for someone else to interpret that blog and tell you what that blog meant, and you've done that. You've read different news articles interpreting it. You can talk to the people directly and have them talk to you about what they see. Or if you have a question that you didn't quite understand, bring it to us live. So I'm really excited to see that happening. We've done a team up with a company called Udacity that does online education and class. And so this is a great environment for people to learn from around the world. And so we've started new programs with HTML5 and game programming with Udacity. And we started that with Google Developers Live. And we're now broadcasting even the study sessions from Udacity's HTML5 course and getting hundreds of viewers live in real time from around the world who couldn't be there in person. And that's what it's about. So breaking down those barriers and breaking down to that transparency. So you get away from Google being a brand without a face behind it, to the point where you know the developers. And you can talk to them and say, I know Evan, I know Ian, And you can go ahead and do that. So what is this about? I mentioned it earlier. It's about Google dramatically scaling our outreach to everyone using live screencasts and interactive video. Now keep in mind, not every video is interactive give and take. Sometimes we have a presentation and we're going to bring it to you. But it is recorded and it's live forever. And it's reaching thousands of people every day. I'm not reaching thousands right now. Love you guys. But we can also hit thousands of people if it's recorded and it's on YouTube and you can get to it. And some of our events, surprisingly, have hit tens of thousands or even 50,000 plus views on YouTube after the fact. And we want that to keep happening so that if you miss the event, it's okay. It's going to be there tomorrow, it's going to be there in 2 weeks, it's going to be there in 6 months. And in 2013, as I mentioned, we're really going to scale worldwide. I manage the 2 Mountain View studios that we have back at headquarters and try to make sure those things run smoothly and on time, and they don't always. I say if there's a mistake to be made with technology, I've made it at least twice. So we've had Paris, London, Milan, Sydney, Tokyo are all coming online this year, and each one of those is going to be broadcasting locally in their local language. And by connecting with these communities live, we can reach thousands of people with every single event. We can reach the right people who are focused on the right pieces, no matter where they are, not just a specific geography. We can take those live questions I mentioned and put people ahead of the brand so that I can bring on the right person to speak for Google, not the person who's been vetted by PR, and there's no PR in the room until they find out how well we're doing. And we want to make continuous improvements to our products. And the only way for us to really improve is to hear directly from you what's working and what's not working. This is your platform and your place to engage with us. So this is what it looks like. Sometimes you think something being really, really polished. It went through marketing and they spent a lot of money and they worked with an ad agency and they pushed it out. Not us. That's not how developers really operate. So we don't either. This is kind of the getup that I've worked with. And if you peek really closely, this is me running GDLs. This is where I spend a lot of my time behind the sessions. So when you look at Google Developers Live, I'm not the guy who's in front of the screen. We want to have the people who actually do the code and work on the APIs to be making that happen. But I've got to be the guy who gets their conversations and puts them on the air and have them stay on the air. So we put a couple mics together, we put some lights up and make sure all the connectors are working, have enough bandwidth so we can upload the video live in real time. And we can go ahead and have those real results. So you might recognize that purple background. It shows up in some of these results. So when you have Michael Manucherry talking about BigQuery, and it seems like a little niche product, like BigQuery within AppScript, within Drive, how deep do you need to go? But for the right people, this is the perfect tool for them if they want to crawl these large data sets. You might as well hear from Michael Manucherry, who's avidly excited about BigQuery. So in this case, we did the blog post, and that day we'd already had the GDL event recorded. And so when the blog post went live, I flipped the bit to public, and we were live. And we had a direct line of information from the people who made it, why it was important, and that was all set directly for you in a way that makes sense. Same thing with the Google Drive SDK. We've done demonstrations with the real-time API now, where you can build a program for yourself which in real time interacts with Drive. In the same way that you have multiple people collaborating with the Drive document, your applications can now do that. And so some of you might say, wait a minute, BigQuery, I've never heard of this. Or wait a minute, real-time API, I didn't know that launched. That's why GDL's here. Go ahead and take a look at that and you can go walk through those. And one thing I always look at GDL, it's not like running a 24-hour network of cable where you go on and you stay on and you have to speak a lot in order to keep things going. You've all seen those shows. It's more like Netflix. And if you're familiar with Netflix, you can go in and get any show that you want at any time and really pull those off. And so for us, if you want to jump in and watch all the Drive videos, go in and watch Drive. If you want to jump in and see the launch of Project Glass in the Glass Foundry, you can take a look at that as well. Here's a good example of the data. When we look at these numbers, I talked about the launch of the Udacity HTML5 course on GDL. We had 1,100 live viewers watching this event. Now maybe that doesn't sound like a lot of people to you. Oh, Google deals with the millions. What's 1,100 people? We're talking 1,100 people stopping what they were doing at work or whatever else they were doing and watching this. On average, most of them watched for more than 20 minutes, which means for everyone who just checked in and left, somebody watched it for 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So they took a good chunk out of their day to really hear from Sebastian Thrun, who's really a legend in terms of innovation, and see what was happening on GDL Live. And so by the time these people had even left their chairs, we had used up 1,150 hours of people's lives. 50 days gone just to watch our event. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you can take a look at the numbers. And we look at data a lot, so that's who Google is. But you can see the peak viewership topping out over 1,100 and staying above 1,000 and then down to 900 for the duration of the event. And this feeds back to us. Are our events too long? Are they too short? When we start the Q&A, do people leave? And so we always want to continually refine and get better as you guys give us feedback and as the data gives us feedback to do a better job presenting live. So what are we doing in 2013? Trust me, there's more on this list that I'm not showing you yet. But we're planning on launching around the world, as I mentioned. We're going to have portable studios, so we can come like this camera right here and bring it to an event and have that stream live. We're going to be actually streaming live at Google I/O this year. That's cool. Every single session from Google I/O is going to be live on the website, and you can watch it. And I'm hoping we have some really unique content streaming on GDL beyond the sessions. So let's say, for example, if one of our presenters goes up and announces a new product, I want him to come on GDL half an hour later and tell you about it. We want to talk about entrepreneurs and startups. A lot of you probably work for startups yourselves or want to run your own business. We have a lot of really knowledgeable people on our team who have run businesses, who've done extremely well or haven't done well, some of whom are angel investors, and we can give tips on that. And so we're going to expand GDL to have more soft content beyond the code, but to talk about really starting a business and getting that product out there. And in fact, in 2 days, I'm speaking at DevOps France to talk about raising your visibility seed round. How do you get from a good idea to get those first users and get those first bloggers and tech press to write about you? So this is something I also want to do on GDL, as you can imagine. I've talked about Google Developers Live at I/O. Every single session will be streaming live on I/O. And so if you go to developers.google.com/live, you should see the hundreds of events which are planned. We'll have exclusive content coming there, so watch this space for more data. We're going to bring it mobile. This is what it looks like. You guys know this is a GDG. Van Riper is our worldwide leader for Google Developers Groups. This is him with Peter Lubbers, one of our Chrome Developer Relations team people, working on bringing this up to the Udacity event. We've taken all of Google Developers Live, put it in a box, and we're taking it up to San Francisco to do an event. So we want to replicate this around the world so that if you have a mobile broadcast that should be happening down at the Opera House, we're going to go ahead and do that. And I mentioned pro tip, check the GDL archives. So if you're somebody who cares a lot about Android, go to developers.google.com/live/android/browse, and you can see all of those pieces. Also, you can just go right to Android and see the latest bits that they have coming up on their calendar, as well as those that have already taken place. And as I mentioned, replace the product name with those that you like here. So to summarize, Google Developers Live gets better with you. It is all about you. The greatest part about having this product available is seeing the impact and the real excitement you have about the new applications that you can write as you learn these cool tips live. Having sat behind hundreds of these events now, seeing the people ask great questions on YouTube, on Google+, and on Moderator, and getting those answers live, even the hard questions, directly from the people who worked on the code, is very exciting to see. So we do want you to watch these events, of course. We do want you to participate in these events. We want you to give us feedback so they can get better. But we're really excited about what's happening here. As you can imagine, we've gone from a tremendous amount of resources and cost and travel budget to hit a small amount of people to a smaller amount of money and budget to hit a lot more people. And this is something that I can produce a new presentation every single week instead of having one presentation and flying out and spending months on it. So really excited to see the kind of ROI that we have, not only for us, but for yourselves as well. So I wanted to wrap that up and say go check out Google Developers Live. I'll stay here for questions until there are no questions. I answered all the questions, apparently. This is what the site looks like right now. If you look at the carousel left to right, you can see shows that are coming up. So depending on your local time, it'll show it here in Pacific time as well, so you can do the conversion. And so you could jump right in and see a Maps event. You can click on root access. This is one of the ones I mentioned that's very startup and entrepreneur friendly. Something simple like, should your startup have an advisory board? This is probably a question that comes up a lot when you get to a certain stage. And so as I mentioned, these videos are on demand. So even if they were delivered live, you can go back and watch them. And they have good intro music as well.
You're an experienced executive.
So you get somebody like Don Dodge, who worked at Alta Vista, Napster, Microsoft, and now works at Google, giving you those tips. And so we want to bring the best in the business to you that we have available right to your browser. So with that, I'm going to take this Chromebook Pixel down with me.
Une question?
Thanks, guys.
Et on t'aimerait pas timide quand même.